Another example of a research study was an experiment in which people were asked to judge the height of men and women from a series of photographs. Each photo showed only one person. All the participants in the research study were instructed to break free of their gender stereotypes. This is an example of the instructions that were given to the research participants. It says, in this booklet, the men and women are actually of equal height. We have taken care to match the heights of the men and the women pictured. That is, for every woman of a particular height, there is also a man of that same height. Therefore, in order to make as accurate a height judgment as possible, try to judge each photograph as an individual case. Do not rely on the person's sex. Despite these instructions and a cash prize of $50 for the person who made the most accurate judgments, people perceived the males to be a few inches taller on average. They were either unable or unwilling to disregard the categories male and female. I'd like to introduce you to another term. It's called outgroup homogeneity. Now that's a really big word for a pretty simple concept to understand. When we talk about outgroup homogeneity or the outgroup homogeneity effect, we're talking about the concept that people tend to see outgroup members as more alike than in-group members. So, outgroup members are more likely to be stereotyped. When we think about this, think about your own circle of friends. When you have members in your circle of friends, you tend to recognize the differences between your friends. Each of your friends likes different things, they have different hobbies, etc. But when you think about people who might be in another group, you see them as inherently more alike than the friends in your group. Let me give you a quick example. If you're a social work major or you're studying graduate social work, you may tend to see the members in your class or your friends and classmates within the school as having unique characteristics and qualities. But when you think about a group that would be considered your out group in this situation, perhaps students across the street from the School of Social Work and the School of Engineering, you might consider them to be similar in ways. Maybe you consider them all to be brainy, or maybe they all tend to like certain things. You might stereotype them simply because they're not in your in-group. And that concept is called outgroup homogeneity. The reason that we see outgroups as more homogeneous than in-groups are because we have more contact with the people in our groups. We have more specific information about the individuals that we know in our groups rather than abstract characteristics. And we're more motivated to make distinctions with people who will make future contact. In-group bias is a term that basically means favoritism towards one's own group. And we know that research has demonstrated that in-group favoritism develops almost immediately. Children are more likely to cooperate when they share a birthday. Women are more likely to marry men who share the first letter of their last name. People named St. Louis are more likely to live in St. Louis. Paul in St. Paul, Helen in St. Helen, and Mary in St. Mary. According to Marilyn Brewer, ultimately many forms of discrimination and bias may develop not because outgroups are hated, but because positive emotions such as admiration, sympathy, and trust are reserved for the in-group. This concept is called implicit egoism and represents our unconscious preference for things associated with ourselves. Social identity theory is the concept that people maintain their self-esteem in part by identifying with groups and believing that groups they belong to are better than other groups that they don't belong to. Research has demonstrated that when people experience a drop in self-esteem, they are more likely to express prejudice. Prejudice then represents a way of maintaining self-esteem. For example, in a research study, researchers had students take an intelligence test, and they were given bogus feedback that wasn't true. Then they were asked to interview and rate Jewish and Italian job candidates. The students who were told they did poorly were more likely to devalue the Jewish candidate and afterwards increase their self-esteem. One more example. I'd like you to read this little abstract about the Nesarima people. They are a North American group living in the territory between the Canadian Cree, the Yaqui, and the Tarahumara of Mexico, and the Carib and Arawak of the Antilles. Nesarima culture is characterized by a highly developed market economy, which has evolved into a rich natural habitat. While much of the people's time is devoted to economic pursuits, a large part of the fruits of these labors and a considerable portion of the day are spent in ritual activity. The focus of this activity is the human body, the appearance and health of which loom as a dominant concern in the ethos of the people. When you form an image of these people, what comes to mind? Are they a primitive people or an advanced civilization? What kind of clothing do you think they wear? What kind of food do they eat? Interestingly enough, this was an abstract that was published in 1956 in a journal called the American Anthropologist. And it was actually a trick. It was a study to look at how quickly people make judgments about other people that they consider outside of their group. The people described in this abstract are actually the American people. Nesarima is actually American, spelled backwards. It demonstrates how quickly we make judgments about people even though little is known about a group's members, how easy it is to form stereotypic images of others, even when the outgroup is not different from ourselves.